All right, 25 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Have you ever been up late at night watching TV and you see some infomercial about how to flip houses and make a lot of money doing that, right? Have you ever wondered if there's any truth to that? Have you ever known anybody who actually did it? Maybe that's a better question. And people, I mean, I know people in the real estate world who are real estate professionals, and they work really hard and really long hours and even weekends, and they do okay. But I don't know that I've ever known anybody who actually was flipping houses and making just gobs of money. That's not to say they're not out there. I'm just saying I've never known anybody. So what is the truth about this? John Agostinelli is on the phone. He is a housing policy commentator. He's a real estate investor. He's the owner of Agostinelli Realty Group. He's got a book called Easy Money and the American Real Estate Ponzi Scheme, From Your Pocket to Theirs, the insider's view of the great housing recession and how it's happening again. John Agostinelli, I don't know that what I said has anything to do with what you're going to say, but good morning anyway. Good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning, Larry. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from today. I'm up in northern New Hampshire.
Northern New Hampshire. Oh, wow. How's the weather there?
Yep, I'm looking at 23 degrees. How's it down there?
I think it's going to reach 80 today.
He fainted.
I think, but you know what I wanted to tell you. I wanted to ask you. I mean, is the housing market, when we talk about the housing market, is it across the board? Like, we seem to have a different set of circumstances here in Central Florida.
So that's a great point, and I'm glad that you're pointing that out. So in our book, we're really talking about housing policy and real estate on a national average basis. Okay. And it's important for people to understand that what's happening down in your market in Florida is different than what happens in my market in Boston and what's happening in Las Vegas.
Okay, so does the book help us learn how to invest better or how to avoid the Ponzi schemes? Or
well,
both?
It's multifaceted. Really, the point of the book was to explain to people what the true causes that led up to the last real estate peak. And because I think the national media has reported ad infinitum about how it was solely the bank's fault. And we go into detail into what the true causes were, which it's much more complicated than just blaming greedy banks and Wall Street.
Okay, yeah, and it makes sense that it would be. But what does it mean to the average guy, sitting up late at night watching those infomercials? Is there anything, like the person who wants to get into real estate and is truly serious about it? I mean, is there hope for that person? Can they make a living at it?
Now you're talking about from a real estate investment perspective?
Maybe. I think I'm mostly talking about the guy who represents buyers and sellers.
Okay, sure. So I think what's important for the average person to understand is that this whole discussion about whether or not home ownership is a good financial investment. So we're told and we read constantly that it's this great investment. But when you really analyze it, you understand that owning a home is not a great financial investment. Now, we're not saying that home ownership is wrong. We just want people to understand that it's not a great financial investment, and if they understand that, maybe instead of purchasing a $550,000 house, maybe they'll purchase a $450,000 house that just meets the needs of the family and put themselves in a better financial position to be able to withstand an financial upset, whether it's losing a job for a short period of time,
right,
reduced work hours, and so forth.
Are reverse mortgages hurting the real estate industry?
No, I don't know that. I don't know that I would say that. The reverse mortgages have their place with people that have a bunch of equity tied into their property. For the elderly, it could be a decent option, but I think that's such a small percentage of the market. That's not our focus.
The book is called Easy Money and the American Real Estate Ponzi Scheme: From Your Pocket to Theirs. Talk about that part of it a little bit. Who would they be when you say theirs? Who are they?
Okay, theirs is anybody but you. So really, theirs is the government collecting your tax money because basically the government spent a tremendous amount of money and increased our national debt buying our way out of the financial crisis.
Yeah, right.
During the Obama administration, we went from about $9 trillion to maybe it was actually when he went into office it was $10 trillion, and now we're very close to $20 trillion in debt. And part of the impetus for writing the book is we are very concerned that our children's future and their standard of living is going to be reduced as a result of us not living within our means.
Yeah, and is that across the board, or is that like myself, specifically with my own children?
I think so this deficit spending is going to be born mostly, it might start with our generation starting to have to pay that debt back down, but certainly it's going to last for decades and will probably lead into our children having to pay it back too. The average taxpayer's portion of the national debt is about $160,000.
So if we're smart as individuals, then we're not necessarily going to be sucked into what the rest of the country will be sucked into. Is that what's your response to that statement?
Well, sucked in how?
In other words,
I'm not understanding your question.
All right, if enough of us are not smart, then the whole country sort of gets sucked into this hole. So let's use the pessimistic assessment, the pessimistic view of this. So in the pessimistic view, can there still be optimism as an individual? I guess is what I'm trying to say. As an individual, can I be smart and protect my own self and my own children, etc.?
Sure. I mean, to the extent of the financial decisions we make. So I think that goes right back to when people are looking at purchasing a home, the bank might tell you that you can afford a $3,000 mortgage. Maybe it doesn't make sense to go right up to the limit. Maybe what we should be doing is going to 80% of what the bank says you can afford, just as a rule of thumb. Because what we're trying to educate people on is, one, homeownership is not a great financial investment, yet we obviously need a place to reside, is just to make sure that you can comfortably afford the mortgage payment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
And because people want to give this air of huge success, even though they're not in that type of financial bracket, what you say is extremely good advice. Don't push it to the maximum because you might be hurting later on down the road.
Absolutely. And if we did this as an entire society, if everyone was living within their means, we wouldn't have had this real estate bubble and collapse that followed in the deficit spending to the tune of $10 trillion over the last 8 years.
Gosh.
Yeah. Gosh, it makes too bad somebody didn't say that earlier, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mention that because there were people that were saying that. So you may have heard of the Case-Shiller Price Index. Shiller had been warning since the early 2000s that we were in a bubble as far as real estate prices were concerned. Yet the government did nothing to slow the appreciation in home prices down. They kept interest rates too low. That's the Federal Reserve. And the housing policies kept on pushing what's termed affordable mortgages. Affordable mortgages to me means that someone can afford to make the payment, not reducing the standard so a low to moderate income borrower can obtain a mortgage.
Can I put you on the spot a little bit and ask you, having a real estate professional in the White House, does that make us in a better place or in a worse place?
Well, that's the $10,000 question right there, and the proof will be in the pudding in regards to his housing policies. Now, he we can talk about Trump's executive order in regards to the mortgage insurance premium cut that was to go into effect, that he put a hold on that. Obama slipped that in right before he left office, and so we'll talk briefly about what that means. That was for FHA. So someone that was purchasing an FHA mortgage would have saved about $48 a month on the insurance premium reduction. But those insurance premiums build up a reserve, so when the market turns and they experience losses, it covers the losses. What happened in the last crisis is FHA had to ask the taxpayer to bail them out. So I think this was a very wise move, and it's a good indication of what I think is going to happen moving forward with policy decisions he makes in regards to real estate and financing.
The website that I have for you is your last name, Agostinelli.com. That's AGOS, right? TINELLI.com. And what's your best advice as to how to buy the book, Easy Money in the American Real Estate Ponzi Scheme?
If you go to our website, easymoneyinamerica.com, you can go to that site. There's a red button there. It clicks purchase. It'll take you straight to Amazon to buy the book. And it has much information about what the book is about, and plenty of testimonials and endorsements of how great the book is.
John, thank you for the it sounds like real common sense advice that we should have been listening to whenever we heard it in throughout the last couple of decades, or at least the last one decade. John, thank you for being on the air with us today.
Larry and Robin, thanks so much for having me on.
All right, we will take a break and be right back.
Veterans are the foundation upon which our freedom is built. Listen to The Source, WOCA, each Thursday at 9 a.m. to Veterans News with Hank Whittier from Vets Helping Vets. You'll hear tributes, information on veterans issues, and stories that will make you laugh, cry, and feel proud. Veterans News always focuses on the military, past and present, and on our first responders. Veterans News is brought to you each week by Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens and Nursery, keeping you blooming since 1952.